Today it's finally time for my full review of the Lenovo Ideapad 5 Pro. This is the 14-inch version together with the Ryzen 7 5800U. I was looking at the 16-inch Intel model previously during summer, and now I finally got the AMD version in, and I have spent about 2 weeks time testing it out to see what I think about this device. I'm W2Best, I make in-depth gear reviews and tutorials, and if you like this video after watching it, it would be super nice if you want to put a like on the video and maybe also subscribe to this channel. That gives me a ton of motivation to bring out new content moving forward. If you want to communicate with me, it is best to do so down in the comment section below, where I'm usually very active, and you can also reach me at Instagram, where I'm at W2Best. The specification I have here is the Ryzen 7 5800U with the integrated graphics. This comes with 16 GB of RAM. The RAM is running in dual channel DDR4 3200 MHz clock speed. This has a relatively fast 512 GB SSD. The screen configuration of my unit here is the matte panel Quad HD 16:10 aspect ratio and 60 Hz refresh rate. It has a color gamut of about 100% sRGB. The ways I have used this laptop has mainly been as my office laptop together with my 3-screen setup in my office here in Gothenburg. On the go when I've been on trains between Gothenburg and Stockholm. And also I've been editing a little bit of video with it to try out that experience. So those are a pretty full-on use case, all of the different things that I use my laptops for. As this will be a pretty long video, you can use the timestamps that are in the description below to find the different parts that you find to be the most interesting. Let's get right into the review content. Let's see if the laptop can be opened with one hand. As you can see, that was no problem at all, and with the Windows Hello Auto Login feature, it is also logging me right into Windows. Let's have a look at the quality feel of this laptop. I think that the overall chassis, both on the top as well as on the bottom here, is a very nice feeling chassis. It is relatively flush with the lid against the top part here, and it has a good metal feeling to this body. It is a full metal chassis, except the bezels that we're gonna see when we move into the inside. When moving to the inside, as you could see when I was making my unboxing video, there is a little bit of quality issues going on here. First of all, the bezel in itself is plastic, so if you are very much against something else than a full-on metal build, this is something that is going to disappoint you. Second of all, there is a little bit of flex here in the right side of the monitor. And if you touch it at the right position and push in a little bit, you're gonna hear a bit of a click there. This is something that is not really disturbing me, but it is as well something that is a little bit of a less quality feel to the laptop as a whole. When pushing down hard on the keyboard like this, you can see there is a little bit of keyboard flex, but not much and nothing that has disturbed me at any kind of normal use. The trackpad is of course flexing a little bit, as the hard clicks should, but it's not more than what you can expect from a Windows trackpad, and there is no rattling noise at all when you're using soft click around here. The palm rest area is also all metal, and I think it has a very nice feeling to it. It's super high quality feel, and it's pretty much the same as the Yoga Slim 7 Pro. Even though the hinge is light enough to be able to open it with one finger, it doesn't wobble very much when you are touching it like this. I brought it on a train ride, and I had no issue at all using it, even though it was a little bit of a bumpy ride. In terms of screen flex, there's also not a lot of screen flex here. It is a little bit what you can expect from any laptop, but it's really not something that I would be worried about in terms of the overall quality. One last bit about the material and the overall build quality that could be of concern is the fact that it is picking up quite a bit of fingerprints. I love the clean, sleek look of this. Only the little Lenovo logo down here, and then no other branding anywhere on the laptop. It's the perfect kind of look for a laptop if you're asking me. However, it definitely picks up fingerprints very easily. And you can probably see right here that there are a bit of fingerprints that are still left there from my previous use. I am really not that sensitive, and it's not like I can see them all of the time and get really disturbed by them. It's just that they are there, and you need to know that this does pick up some fingerprints. This laptop cannot be folded all the way down to the table. It stops a few degrees before it goes down to the table with the screen. The laptop weighs in at 1,397 grams. Together with the included power brick and power cable, it weighs in at 1,761 grams. The power brick itself is a very compact 65-watt USB-C charger. It is quite a bit more square compared to the Lenovo chargers the way they have been up until now. But as you can see, it's a relatively long USB-C cable part plus a relatively long power cable as well, so it's definitely going to be long enough for anyone who needs a bit of a longer cable. I know from previous use that these Lenovo laptops work with pretty much any USB-C charger that you have lying around. A 45-watt charger is more than enough to charge one of these guys. Let's have a close-up look on the port selection here. This is the ports on the right-hand side. You have a full-size SD card reader together with 2 USB-A ports. When you're using the SD card reader, this is the amount that the SD card protrudes from the computer. And this is the speed that I was getting from this SD card reader. Not the fastest, but I wasn't too disturbed by it. Good to have it there still in a 14-inch laptop. Here we have the ports on the left-hand side. This is one USB-C port, an HDMI. We have another USB-C port, and we have the microphone headphone combo jack. I thought, as the 16-inch version only has one fully fledged USB-C port, and then another one that could only be used for charging and data, that it would be the same case here. But it is not. I can use both of the USB-C ports with my monitor at work and use that both for charging, data and DisplayPort out. As you could see before, it was working, and then I unplugged and I tried to re-plug it in, and it's not working. So this is one thing that actually worries me quite a bit with this device, because this is one of the most important use cases for me personally. When switching over to another monitor of the same model, you can see that it plugs in and it starts working right away. Switching to the other outlet, it also works right away. Bringing out one of my mobile monitors, plugging that in, it recognizes the device, starts up quickly, and then it gets completely black. And I've tried this numerous times with a few different external monitors, and I can't get it to work in any way over USB-C. So it seems to me that the unit is not giving enough power through USB-C, so it only gets the monitor signal, and then it's not enough power to keep driving it, so it's being switched off instead. Let's talk a bit about coil whine, idle fan noise, and the idle temperature of the machine. I think this is a very good unit when it comes to coil whine. Now when I'm leaning into it, I can hear absolutely no coil whine at all coming from the body of the laptop. And that is something that is actually quite unusual. In most units you can hear a little bit of coil whine, but in this one it is very, very silent. That also goes for fan noise. Now we are in an idle state. We have a few browser tabs open and Spotify is running. But nothing else is on, and there are no heavy tasks running, and the computer is completely silent in this state. The CPU temperature when we are in this idle stage is between 33 and 34 degrees Celsius. And the temperature of the chassis is about 28.5 degrees on this part, which is usually the hottest one on the laptop. Those are some really impressive stats for the idle state, so let's see later on if it stays that way when maxing the performance of the laptop. Let's talk a bit more about the screen of this unit, because it is really one of the stars of the show here. This screen is a Quad HD matte panel with 2560 x 1600 pixels. It is a 16 by 10 aspect ratio, and this model comes with a 60 Hz refresh rate. There is also another model with the same spec, but with a 90 Hz refresh rate. I didn't get that one because it was considerably more expensive. The brightness of the monitor is around 350 nits, and in combination with this matte panel, I think that is really bright enough. This is a bit of a personal preference thing, but for me, matte monitor together with 350 nits of brightness is perfect, even for bright sunlight or outdoor use conditions. The colors of the monitor are also very good, and it is rated at 100% sRGB. If you want to know the monitor type in IDA64, you have those stats here. This is a IVO8C45 monitor, and the model number is M140NWHER0. When it comes to laptop screens, I really think that Lenovo is going from one leap to the next leap with every model that I try. This is one of the best laptop screens I've ever tried, and I really think that this is the perfect kind of screen for a mixed use case like the one I have myself. The Yoga Slim 7 Pro that I have has the 90 Hz refresh rate. And the thing there is that it is more power draining than what it's actually useful to have the 90 Hz. I feel like stepping down to the 60 Hz is something that doesn't bother me that much at any kind of daily use. Because it is a 16:10 aspect ratio, you of course get a little bit of black borders down in the bottom and up in the top. But that is something that is well worth the sacrifice, because when you are doing productivity work, you get more lines available and more height available for all of your work stuff. Let's talk a bit about the battery life. And the battery life of this computer is relatively good. It's a bit better than the Yoga Slim 7i Pro that I have been using for the past few months. Although saying that, it still has a pretty battery consuming screen that goes up to a pretty bright brightness level, and it is very high resolution. So when you run this in max brightness and do something a little bit more intense, you will drain the battery pretty quickly. I was doing my 1 hour streaming test where I'm streaming video on 50% brightness with Wi-Fi turned on. This is in better battery mode set in Windows, and I started with 80% battery, and after exactly 1 hour of streaming video, I had 70% battery left, and that stated 9 hours and 58 minutes left of the battery when I paused the video. So that is pretty promising in terms of battery life when you are maxing it. And I think it's very different here if you're doing something a little bit lighter like streaming a video, or if you're doing some more intense tasks that I would usually do when I work. Both the keyboard and the trackpad in this laptop are working really well. And I couldn't ask for more, to be honest. This is a classic Lenovo keyboard, but I just feel that it's very responsive and one of the better feeling Lenovo keyboards that I've used so far. The same goes for the trackpad. It is ample size and it is working really well with gestures, has a really good quality feel to it, and no rattling noises when tapping it. Both the layout together with the feeling of typing on this keyboard makes it very recommended from my part. The speakers, I think, are doing a pretty good job in this machine. So have a listen to them now at medium volume, and then when I turn it up to full volume to see what you think. In today's video we are finally going to unbox and take a first look at the Lenovo Ideapad 5 Pro. I just received this guy yesterday. It's the AMD version with the Ryzen 7 CPU, and I'm super excited to start using this guy to see how this compares to the Yoga Slim 7i Pro that has been my main 14-inch driver for the past 4 or 5 months. I'm W2Best. I make in-depth gear reviews and tutorials, and if you like this video after watching it, it would be super nice if you want to put a like on the video and maybe also subscribe to the channel. That gives me a ton of motivation to bring out new content moving forward. The speaker elements are down here in the bottom, as you can see. But there are also these grills up top here next to the keyboard. And this is something that I actually really appreciate, because it means that some of the audio will be coming up from the front. Even though there's no speaker there, it will still be putting up some of the audio, making the quality quite a bit better compared to only having the downward firing speakers. I think there's not a lot of depth to the sound, but it is completely okay for all of the use cases that I have been trying it out for during these past 2 weeks. The Wi-Fi card of this unit is a Realtek RTL8852AE Wi-Fi 6 802.11ax PCIe adapter. I've been trying out the Wi-Fi with a few different networks and the Bluetooth mainly with my wireless mouse that I use for pretty much every single task that I use with the computer. The Bluetooth has been working completely flawless. The Wi-Fi has been working okay, but it feels like it's sort of throttling at some points. Especially when the Wi-Fi connection isn't perfect. I have had some issues with getting proper download speeds with this computer. Now that I'm in my office and do a benchmark, I get 99 megabits per second download speed and then 77.5 megabits per second upload speed. So that is a fine result, but I have been having a few issues and it's not perfect in terms of the Wi-Fi card. The overall Windows experience has been really good with this machine. I think that it's super snappy, it works for all the different things I've used it for, and I couldn't really ask for more. The combination of that kind of fluid Windows experience and a very good keyboard, trackpad and screen combo makes this a very usable machine for most of the things you want to do with it. It comes with a little bit of bloatware, which mainly is the McAfee antivirus, something that you can quickly uninstall. It also comes with a bunch of Lenovo Suite programs, and the main thing there is Lenovo Vantage, which you want to be able to use different power profiles. The quickest way to switch between different power profiles is to press the FN key and then the Q key. And there we have battery saving mode, we have extreme performance mode, and we have intelligent cooling mode. For most of the use cases, you want to be using intelligent cooling mode. But if you are running on battery power and you want to max the power of the computer, you can for sure switch it over to extreme performance mode. That will keep the laptop at an as high power as possible to the CPU and giving you a bit more performance at the expense of battery life. Because I haven't decided yet if I'm going to keep this laptop permanently, I'm not going to get to the inside of it. But I can tell you that it is very non-upgradable. There is no upgradable RAM, you are stuck with what you are buying from the beginning. There is though an upgradable SSD, but no extra SSD slot, which is something that I would really have liked to see, even if I know it's a bit of a limited space in a 14-inch device. The memory is dual channel, 16 GB, and it is a DDR4 running in 3200 MHz. Here you can see the read benchmark from IDA64, the write benchmark, the copy benchmark, and the latency benchmark. The SSD in this laptop is a Samsung MZ-ALQ512 HBLU00BL2. I was benchmarking the SSD, both being plugged into power, and there I received 2699 megabytes per second read and 1187 megabytes per second write. When I ran it on battery power, I received 2681 megabytes per second read, 1432 megabytes per second write. These are okay stats, but they are really not the fastest in terms of SSD speeds. So I'm a little bit disappointed that they didn't put a super fast PCIe Gen 4 into this machine. It would have made a difference, I think, in some different use cases. Let's now take a closer look at the performance of the laptop, together with checking the temperatures under load. We are now in extreme performance plugged into power, and we are gonna run a Cinebench R23 loop for 10 minutes to see how the laptop performs with its 8 cores and 16 threads. AMD Ryzen 5800U CPU is a 1.9 GHz CPU, and we are gonna see the temperatures as well as the total score in Cinebench R23. After a little bit of runtime here, about 1.5 minutes, the fans start picking up to a level where they are definitely audible. At this point we have a CPU temperature of 81 degrees. And that means we have a surface temperature of around 30 degrees up top here. The WASD keys are below 30 degrees, 29 degrees at this point. So the laptop is definitely able to cool itself even when the CPU is kicking up a bit in temperature. At this point we are at 100% CPU utilization and we are running the CPU at a clock speed of 3.47 GHz. A few minutes later we are at 83 degrees on the CPU, and that means we have a surface temperature of roughly 32 to 33 degrees. Still a super cool chassis temperature, not a problem at all. Around halfway into the test, something interesting is happening. Now the fan noise is getting a bit lower, and the CPU temperature is getting lower as well. We are down to 76 degrees. So here we must have had some kind of throttling happening. But now when we are looking at the stats, we are at 100% utilization and 3.26 GHz. Now it is boosting up again and then down to 3.26 GHz. So let's stay here a little bit and see if it's going up and down like that or if it's staying around 3.2 GHz. At this point the fans are a little bit less loud than what they were before in the first 5 minutes of the test. The surface temperature is between 33 and 34, sometimes up to 35 degrees here in the top area of the chassis. At this state, with 3.2 GHz, 76 degrees on the CPU, we have a power draw of 30 watt from the CPU. So this is a 15 watt chip, but it is able to draw 30 watts of power for quite a long time sustained. And while it was running at 3.5 GHz for a very long time, it then went down to 3.25, and it is trying to kick up to 3.5 and sometimes even 4, but then it gets immediately down to 3.2 again. We are now reaching the very end of this benchmark, and we are still at 76-77 degrees on the CPU. We are still at a CPU utilization of 100% and a speed of 3.26 GHz. The maximum temperature up here in the hottest area has now increased to between 34.5 and 35.5. Still, it is incredibly cool to the touch. I barely can't believe that we have maxed out the CPU for such a long time without receiving any kind of heat on the chassis. The WASD keys are at 34 degrees and they're also not at all hot to the touch. We were running Cinebench R23 plugged into power and with extreme performance mode on, and we now received a score of 10,977 points. For a 15 watt CPU that is able to sustain such an intense load without getting hot and scoring almost 11,000 in Cinebench R23 is absolutely fantastic. The AMD Ryzen 7 5800U in this unit is really amazing at keeping up with a high performance at the same time as not getting too hot. Heaven Benchmark Full HD with extreme performance and plugged into power scored 833 points, with an average FPS of 33.1. Minimum FPS was 7.2 and maximum FPS 125.8. So this tells me this laptop is not made for heavy graphical work, and if you need that, you should probably pick the version that has the MX450 dedicated GPU. In the Novabench benchmark, we get a total score of 3,255. The CPU scored 2,359, the RAM scored 286, the GPU 403, and the disk score was 206. This is really not a gaming laptop, as it doesn't even have a dedicated GPU. However, I think it could be possible to play some games on it, because it still has a decent internal GPU, and here we have a game of Overwatch. The settings that we get from the game is a medium graphics and a render scale of 79%. That is with a resolution of 1920 x 1200, so we're not running it in the native resolution of the monitor, but a lower Full HD resolution here. Let's see what we reach in terms of FPS with these settings. As you could see in the gameplay example right there, it was a pretty well working experience. The computer wasn't running too loud, it is not running hot to the touch, it stays at those 36-37 degrees on the hottest area of the palm rest. This is a well working experience for a 60Hz monitor like the built-in one, but it is not good enough to run it, for example, with an external higher refresh rate monitor. And since there's no Thunderbolt in this unit, it's not gonna be much of a gaming machine, and if you need gaming, you're gonna have to look elsewhere. Another thing that is very important for me personally is to be able to edit my videos in Davinci Resolve. This is something that is usually not worked well at all with AMD CPUs. And I've actually not had any AMD CPU where it has been a flawless experience. As you can see, that was working with no problem at all, something that has made me very happy. Finally, I know that I can use AMD CPU together with Davinci Resolve. That is going to be it for my review and benchmark video of the Lenovo Ideapad 5 Pro, the 14-inch AMD version that was released in the autumn of 2021. I think this is an amazing little machine that has so many good things to it. However, there are some quirks that I'm not yet sure if I'm going to be able to live with. Mainly, that is that the USB-C ports are not working perfectly for me with my different monitor solutions. I don't think I can take non-working USB-C ports for a device that I would be using for several years. So I'm not yet sure if I can be comfortable to say that this guy would be replacing my Yoga Slim 7i Pro that has been just working perfectly from the very beginning. The big ups for this guy is that the screen, the keyboard and the trackpad combo together with the ports and the speakers are all really good. There is really no flaws to it in terms of all of those basic features that you need in a laptop. It doesn't have perfect quality feel because of the plastic bezel and this little thing that was here on the right hand side making a noise when you push in on that part of the bezel. So that's not perfect, but it's completely livable when everything else is good. What's not completely livable is having non-working or less than perfectly working USB ports. And that's something that I'm gonna try out a little bit more and see how this is, if I can resolve it in some way, or if this is something that actually becomes a deal breaker for me in trying to keep using this laptop. I do travel a lot and I do use mobile monitors a lot. So having a working mobile solution with multiple monitors is something that I really value a lot. But that is my personal use case. As you have seen in this video, this is a very versatile laptop that can work for pretty much any kind of use case. And I think it is still one of the best 14-inch laptops that you can find that has a very good balance between performance, price, and weight. It has all of these solid features and the solid port setup that you need to be able to have a proper productivity, office or video editing machine in 2021. I'm W2Best and I make in-depth gear reviews and tutorials. If you like this video after watching this far, it would be super nice if you want to put a like on the video and also subscribe to the channel. That would make me really happy and motivated to bring out new content. The next video I will be releasing on this guy will be the comparison video against the Lenovo Yoga Slim 7 Pro. So stay tuned for that video and have a really nice day, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!